Welcome to Adeptus On-Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am your host again, Mike Hoffman, and today I am joined by SAG-AFTRA and Actors Equity actor, Matt Drago. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing so great, Mike. Thanks for having me on today.
No problem. I appreciate you coming on. Matt lives in LA. He's been in a bunch of film and TV projects, including What Would Jesus Do? The Journey Continues, Disney's Counting Scars, Prophets of Science Fiction, and the popular podcast No Other Way. And he is set to be in the feature film Somewhere in Montana, set to release in 2025. So exciting stuff coming up.
Oh, absolutely. It's anytime you got stuff going on as an actor, you're just grateful. And I feel like I'm in the sweet spot in my career right now where I'm just enjoying every part of it.
Good. And we'll talk about that movie in a little bit. I actually watched the trailer this morning, so looked really cool.
It's a great trailer. Yeah. John Shimke, our editor, he cut it together and he's just wildly talented. He just got all the beats perfect, and really great trailer. I was really
so we'll definitely talk about that, but let's catch up to where you are now from where you were. So you were an East Coast kid, correct?
I am, yeah. So originally, my family actually is from New York City, Upper West Side, 79th and Broadway. Got some family in Jersey. Since then, we've kind of all dispersed. I grew up in Virginia. And met a lovely lady in New York City in an acting class, found out we grew up 3 blocks away from each other in a small Virginia town.
Wow.
Moved out to LA and, never looked back. And my girlfriend then, now my wife, and we just, that's kind of, I guess I've been on both coasts, but yeah, originally an East Coast kid for sure at heart.
Is your wife in the business as well?
She is. She's writing. She's kind of got a couple scripts that she's trying to pitch. We're trying to get our first feature film budgeted. We've got our production company, Dragon Hunter Productions, up and running. It's got a couple podcasts under it, and we're just trying to, keep telling good stories.
Hey, that's what it's all about. You gotta have that creative part of the brain. Something I've kind of always lacked, but it's amazing talking to you entertainers, the processes and so forth that kind of come up with these ideas or these these things behind how you're able to act out roles, and so forth. So from what I'm seeing, you're more of it seems like you tend more to the dramas as opposed to like the comedy. Is that intentional or just kind of how the career's evolved?
I mean, I think honestly, like parts are meant for you or they're not. I do audition for comedies as well. I actually am, I think things come your way in the way that they're supposed to. But for me, I think drama has always kind of been kind of the way I'm seen in the industry a little bit more. And sometimes you don't necessarily have control of that. I love dramas. I love comedies. But at this point in my career, I think the dramas have definitely attracted me and kind of my vibe and me as an actor a little bit more.
So it's funny. So I was looking at your IMDb this morning, doing my research and stuff. And, I looked at the different roles and so forth, characters and so forth. And it's got to make you feel good because I don't know if you've seen this. For your role in Just Go With It, your character name is, do you know what it says?
It's been a long time. You have to remind me.
You're a hot bar guy.
I am the hot bar guy. Yes.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool because I've never been referred to in any way like that. So for me, if somewhere online I'd be known as the hot guy somewhere, that'd be kind of cool.
That was a great first gig in LA because it was a really, really long shoot day and everybody just had such great energy. Yeah. Adam Sandler he has his own production company, so. Yeah. He just knows everybody on set, and just the ease in which scenes were shot and delivered was just extraordinary. And I think I've realized more and more in my own career that the industry is really a team sport. You're nothing without not just your managers, your agents. I have a wonderful PR rep now with Mia Hansen over at Portrait PR. I just have some really, really great people around me right now, and I feel like that's kind of what you need in this industry. Like, you are the sum of all of your parts, not just in life, but in your career too. And so, yeah, just really grateful for this team that I've got assembled around me, kind of coming into this new year where I've got this awesome film coming out.
That's great. Yeah, he's been in New Jersey a lot lately. He's kind of taken over the state, where I am, because he's filming Happy Gilmore 2 in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So you hear stories all about how he's just showing up in restaurants, and I know he filmed at a local golf course that I know someone who works there, and they just say he's just a class act, to be around. He just treats everyone as if they're, he is not superior in any way. He just kind of treats everyone as a real nice.
And that's honestly the way more people, like, again, for whatever reason, actors, get sometimes a bad rep. For the most part, the actors that I've been around, the people, I should just say, that I've been around in the entertainment field are some of the most giving, selfless people I've ever met, in the way that they will give you not just their time, but really their energy in, just kind of wanting to be available to you. And we can talk a little bit more about that with this film, but the cast for Somewhere in Montana just was a family. I mean, we go out to dinners together, we would hike together, we would have really awesome conversations together. And I just think that there are more people out there in this industry that are more like that than not.
All right, well, since you brought me to that movie, let's just stay there for a minute. So
sure.
Was it actually filmed in Montana?
It was filmed in Polson, Montana. The entire shoot was in Polson, Montana.
Yeah, so
right against that Flathead Lake. It's just beautiful there.
Yeah, I mean, beautiful. So why don't you tell everyone just the basic premise of it? Because I said I watched a 2-minute trailer, but for all I know, I got the story all wrong.
Sure. So I play Fabian Verdugo. He's an up and coming, on the verge of, we can say, like, famous or whatever director. But for the most part, I think his goal is very much to leave a couple good stories behind and try to impact the world with storytelling. So that's his main focus. That's his legacy, so to speak, because this film really does focus a lot on legacy, and we all have legacies, right? And John's is what I call more of a simplistic legacy. Again, not better or worse. There are so many simpler legacies out here that I'm jealous of, that I wish I could feel like that, so what was incredible is, John is the Montana rancher, I'm the West Coast director. I'm coming into his world, right? So I need him because it's the last big scene that we're shooting in this film. And, like it is in the business, I've got, the producers and the investors kind of like at my throat, and we're kind of like on borrowed time at this point. And we have some actors in the movie that we frankly probably can't afford, but we're really trying to make things work. And it's just a very high pressure situation that we're trying to achieve. And John and I, played by my friend Graham McTavish, we butt heads right away. You can tell that there's just that instant dissonance that we feel very similarly within our own society right now. And it is a story of the time, and it is very charged. But and I don't want to give too much away, but we try to work through it. And I think that's kind of the main goal of the film, is to show that respect is, I think, in many ways, in my life, especially as Matt, one of the highest forms of respect that you can give another human being. And so it just is. There's a lot of twists and turns in the movie. It's definitely not just that. There's some things that happen in the movie that are out of anybody's control, but it is basically a conversation piece. And that's why Brandon Smith, the writer and the director of the film, really wanted it to come out in theaters. So we're hoping for a pretty strong theatrical run in starting January 10th of 2020.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So this is going to be an actual theater release. Okay.
Yeah. He really wants people to, have those, I like to call them those little 2-minute conversations that we used to have, after we left a movie theater, and just, word of mouth is still, I believe, the best brand of advertising, right?
Yeah.
And this isn't indie. It doesn't have the multi-million-dollar marketing budget, which now I understand, right? As an actor getting into producing, sometimes you just can't afford to put millions of dollars into marketing. So it's doing podcast interviews like I'm doing with you right now, Mike, that help just kind of give people the idea that, wow, let me give this a shot to this story of the times and this beautiful movie called Somewhere in Montana.
So what's the process for a movie? Now moving away from this one specifically. So this is a theater release. So what is the process early on for people listening? How's it decided if it's going to be a theater release or a streaming on one of the thousands of, streaming services right now? So at what point in the process, is that before this even starts? Is it during? Does that decision come to fruition?
Yeah, there's no clear path. The reality is everything ends up at streaming now eventually.
Yes.
It's just whether you can get it to a theatrical run beforehand. Sometimes streaming platforms will just buy out a film straight out and it'll just live there. And we're talking about big budget films that just end up on streaming and you'll never see them in a theater. It's kind of becoming more and more of the norm. And, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I mean, I just went to see Wicked a couple times in the theater. I couldn't imagine literally just getting on my couch and seeing that movie. Like, I saw it in 40X and it hit me in the face and I just loved it. And I was immersed in it. And I think I used to go to, I'll just go back to my New York days. I used to go to like the 1 a.m. movies, I used to, you know what I mean? Like I used to, like as a kid, like it was one of my first scary movies, but like The Sixth Sense. And it was just like when the big reveal happened, I just remember people in the theater being like, what the hell? Like screaming, like just like, and I just think that there is such an amazing thing that I can't believe I'm having to say this, but that can come out of being together, right? And experiencing something together. But now that we're past 2020, 2021, COVID, we have to fight for that a little bit more. So to get back to your question, it really comes down to the distributor. It really comes down to who you're partnering with. Again, a lot of what we do is a team sport. And Brandon, Eden, Bryant, who's another producer, and Joe Borden, they're working to figure out the best way to get eyes on the film. And so for them, what we did, I guess I could tell you specifically our course, is we went to Rocky Mountain NATO, which is the National Association of Theater Owners, a couple months ago in Utah. And we essentially pitched the movie. I was there, Kaylee Macchio was there, Andrew Roa was there, a couple of people from the film. And we basically just worked to pitch the film to independent theater owners to try to get them to do an independent run. Because again, I don't know what movie theaters we're going to land in. There are a lot of theater owners around the country that are struggling right now because people can't come to theaters. So we are trying to partner with those theaters to say, hey, give us a shot. We'll give you a shot. Like, hopefully this can be a film that you can have exclusive access to show to people. And it will be a story that can gravitate towards those little areas. And I was meeting theater owners from Idaho, from Utah, from Colorado. So our course was that to get us to a theatrical run. And then, behind the scenes of all of that, the distribution company that they're partnering with Filmmaker is trying to get it into some streaming platforms as well. And then that's kind of phase 2 after, what a theatrical release probably is like 2 to 4 weeks, something like
Yeah.
that. We'll see where it lands after that.
And I'm sure some movies that don't necessarily thrive, sometimes in a theater, somehow get legs, a few months later on a streaming service. You see it with TV shows. As an example, I could say Suits. Suits never really caught on USA, but then it goes streaming on Netflix and becomes this like sensation.
It's the best thing about what we do, especially in film, is it's not all or nothing. It feels that way sometimes,
Right.
especially if you've got all of your skin in the game, all the money and time and effort that you put into it, because film is sacrifice, especially at the indie level.
Yeah.
And it really, really is. I mean, I see, especially with friends, even within this production, that have done some scary things to fight for their dreams. And it's funny that a lot of that rubbed off on my character as Fabian, because he does the same thing. Like,
Right.
a lot of people will go down with their ship because they believe in what they're doing. I always say, like, artists sometimes are at a disadvantage because, like, we are obsessed with the dream. And so, like, we'll fight for it till,
Right.
till there's nothing to fight for.
I imagine it's a bit of a balancing act because, you're not only yourself, you're a husband, so you have responsibility of the family. Not that your wife doesn't work. I don't know if you have any children or whatever. So you have this passion and this dream of yours, which is great to shoot for. But at the same point in time, like all of us, there's a reality to life.
Yeah.
And there's bills and there's responsibilities. So I imagine that's also, a constant battle in your head saying, okay, I love this project. It's a passion project, but this project potentially maybe pays more, but it's not really something I'd love to do. And it's kind of figuring out what's the right fit for you personally from a career development, but also you as a supporter.
100%. And again, that does go back to your team. Like, I just had a wonderful conversation for an hour with my manager, and we're talking about what the next year looks like. I mean, at the end of the day, you really do want to stay in your lane as much as possible.
Sure.
And I want to focus on acting next year. I mean, as silly as that sounds, because a lot of acting, is marketing. It's learning how to be a good marketer, especially nowadays. And most of the time we don't really want to have to focus on that. We want to be able to take in the role, work on the scenes, develop the characters, put something good on tape, and then let it go. Because again, you don't have, full control, obviously, of what roles come to you. But I do think that the ones that do come to you are meant for you. I really believe that. I didn't realize how much I was, quote unquote, right for Fabian or am Fabian in many ways, until basically I was shooting the film, until after it wrapped. And I was like, wow, like, Matt is really obsessed with the dream too. He is very legacy driven. And that is something that is a through line in Fabian that Brandon and Eden and Joe saw in me that I didn't even see in myself until after I had gotten the role.
Now, do you feel like the character? So do you feel that maybe the way they envisioned Fabian when they were writing the script, how much do you think your interpretation and your portrayal of it maybe evolved what the character ended up being versus maybe what they initially saw the character being?
I reflect on that all the time, because some of my favorite parts of this entire process is actually way back to the very beginning. I was one of the first people cast in the film, and Brandon Smith was looking for somebody very specific. He was really considering an unknown actor, even with the thousands and thousands of submissions that came in for this one. When I was given the role, we would sit on Zooms together, just like we're doing now. And we would go through scene by scene by scene by scene together with the director and the writer of the film. And again, that's very rare. That doesn't necessarily happen in many things. And I just really I think back to those times all the time, because that was really special. It was really special because what we were actually doing was we were collaborating and building the character together. because a lot of Fabian he wrote himself into, and a lot of Fabian he felt like I brought to the table.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a meeting of those two things. And it wasn't until Brandon and I would jump on these really, I mean, they were really special, these really special Zooms together. And we would just kind of hash out these scenes together that I like figured out what I could bring to the character.
Yeah.
And I could also discern what he needed from the character. And so it was just kind of like that happy marriage of those two kind of minds meeting. And that's kind of what evolved to me showing up on set a week early, because I'm not a director in real life. I maybe someday will be, but I wanted to show up a week early so I could shadow him and understand what it was like to be a director.
Yeah.
And that's when, honestly, when I went over the hills and saw Flathead Lake and came into Montana the first time, and Brandon's calling me and he's like, Matt, where are you? We're at the first location. And I'm like, I don't know, Brandon, somewhere in Montana, you know, and
it's not working right now.
Right. And I just showed up and I felt like I was instantly immersed in just being ready to tell this story. And so much of that came from just the work that we did together and those really special Zooms that I'll always cherish.
That's interesting. And I guess you also got, I don't want to say lucky is the wrong word, but yeah, I guess we'll call it lucky that you had a director that was so open to having your input. Because I imagine there are some situations where, all right, here, this is how we want it, go. So I think you had someone who was open to that collaboration.
Absolutely. And every like creative process is different, and you kind of have to really just kind of roll with it. Having really wonderful conversations with my friend Graham right on set. And, he's like he's actually the first person that's ever called me mate, and that was like after we wrapped, he just looked at me and he said, see you, mate, because we really connected over this film. It was a story that we really wanted to tell, very we wanted to personalize it, but we wanted it to feel grounded. We didn't want it to feel over dramatic in any way. We wanted it to feel like a real conversation between two guys. We have a 10-page scene that's just the two of us, which is very rare in modern cinema. And I think it was just kind of the real feeling that we all had on set, that we were all telling a story that was bigger than ourselves. And I think that's what made it really special.
Yeah. So we're I think slightly different generations. I appear to be a tad older than you, but what were some of the movies that really like inspired you when you were growing up, that you like watched and like really kind of reinforced that this is what I want to do? TV shows too, any kind of.
I mean, I have to go into the Godfathers and the Rockies. I'm an Italian guy from New York, right? But I felt like those specifically, those roles, anything with Pacino, De Niro, for me always resonated. I just felt very, very early on just immersed in film. Whenever I watched a film, I felt captured by it. Same with theater, by the way, because I'm a theater kid too. My grandma would bring me to the Winter Garden. I was on stage watching Cats, at like 4 years old, and and growling at the cats and interacting during the show. And one of the cats like came up and tied my shoelaces together, and I was always entranced by art and being immersed in a story. I think that's kind of where the love of it came. And I think it's kind of evolved through the years, where I can say there have been parts of my life where I've really wanted to be an actor. I've really wanted to book that job, right? There's that part of it. But I think as you go through the process a little bit more and you realize like it is a journey, it's a marathon, not a race, and you're in it and you love it. I think you realize that it's just, you're so grateful just to get the opportunity to be part of anything, that resonates with people.
It's funny you mentioned Cats. I've seen a lot of Broadway shows over the years. My wife and I try, we're in New Jersey. We try to go to a few shows every year. Cats was the only show I've seen that I actually left at intermission.
Oh, really?
Now you different for you. You started at 4, so I was a little older.
I was at 4. Yeah, I mean, and again, like I was with my grandma.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but again, I think that's also a really beautiful thing about art too, is that like, it, not every story is for
Right,
everybody.
exactly.
We do tend to follow directors, actors that we like, and I think there's a big part of that too, is that we just want to give you what we have, right? As a production, as an actor, you're never going to get full creative control over everything, but you do your job, and then the hardest thing is you give it away, and you get critiqued or judged. Some people will like it, some people won't like it, but you keep doing it because of your love to do it. I mean, going back to it, I think I feel like I really wanted to be an actor at many points in my life. I wanted to book the job. And now I do. I feel like it's more of an inherent need. And I think the need comes from what we're up against with AI. And, just I want your kids to not say when they're, grown up, to say like, oh, wow, Dad, it's a weird movie. There's like actual human beings in it. Because that's kind of what we're up against right now. And I do think that we need stories that have real human tears and real human emotions. And we need to see human beings telling stories. And that's really not just in film or in theater. That's like in person, right? We need I jokingly say like human stories matter, but it really is. It's true right now. And so I think the best that you can do is just figure out what your best stories are, and fight to create them in this life, and then give them away and hope they have an impact on your generation or future generations.
Well, and again, I recognize, I think I was in the minority because that show ran for how many years and how many performances. So clearly I was not one of the many who walked out, but
but that's like okay. I mean, that's okay. Again, like what a cool conversation that we're having right now, where it wasn't your show, but it was a show that changed my life. Exactly. Like that's pretty cool in a way. It's like I like there's no shame in that, because there are probably things that you like that I don't like. I mean, it's taste.
Of course not everything I like. Of course you're gonna like.
Right, exactly.
Why would you say that?
Right, exactly. Oh man,
the first shows I saw. Like I remember, I could tell you probably the first 2 shows that I saw, and they stick to my head. And maybe they laid the foundation because I was an impressionable 4-year-old or 5-year-old, whatever it was. And I remember them, to this day.
Yeah.
And so, one of them was Annie, and that obviously is a show that doesn't go away. It's back right now, actually, with Whoopi Goldberg playing right now at the Garden. And the other one did go away. And I've never heard of the show, The Tap Dance Kid.
No.
Okay, but when I saw it, Google it. It stars some kid named Alfonso Ribeiro.
Oh, wow!
Yeah.
Wow!
Yeah, and that was one of the first shows I saw. And that's where, then he kind of went away. And then I remember watching a few years later a TV show called Silver Spoons. And he popped up with Ricky Schroeder, and he popped up as one of the leads. I'm like, wait a minute, that was the kid I saw. And sure enough, and now obviously he's on TV all the time. You can't really put on a channel without seeing him hosting something. But but that's my memory of those shows, and my first Broadway experiences.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, it's just, there is no clear-cut path, and I think I've realized that of late, and all I can do is just keep speaking my truth and what stories I like to tell and what stories I want to be a part of. I mean, I will say specifically to Somewhere in Montana, it is and I got Brandon a really cool custom art piece with like the Somewhere in Montana logo and like all the sets and everything like that. And on the back, I basically wrote, thank you for the role of a lifetime, because for me this is not just a film that I booked, and got a paycheck from. This is a role in a film that I've always dreamed of being a part of, something that feels like I'm doing something right by the world, that I'm trying to tell a story that people might or might not listen to, but I still feel like it has a lot of importance to it. And it's why I have always been gravitated towards acting, because if you can, and I think about it even going back to my dinner theater days, like in Virginia, or just coming off stage and seeing the people that like were moved by my performance. I mean, it's a togetherness. There's something that's like a real togetherness when you feel something in a theater, when you experience something with other people. And I think it's something that we definitely need to get back to.
And I think it's also nice, as you kind of said, they wanted, I forget the exact word to use. You might have said like an unknown. I forget the word. So sorry if I'm using the wrong word. I think it's great to watch a movie that you really latch onto, and that person you're latching onto is someone you haven't seen before. Like, I like that. It's always great to see a movie like, oh, I love this actor. They're in a new movie. You know, Tom Hanks, brilliant actor, would probably see everything he's in, and he's great in everything he's in. But I think there's also, I really enjoy seeing a movie with someone I've never seen before. Like, wow, they're really good. You know?
Yeah, I love like the idea of the quote unquote unknown actor, because speaking as an unknown actor, getting an opportunity to, star in a film opposite somebody like Graham McTavish, and Michelle Hurd, it really, how do I say this? It's, it doesn't change you as the actor that you were before you booked the role.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives you a platform to hopefully create momentum so that you can keep telling more and more stories within your type, so
obviously I'm not you, but I gotta believe it changes you as an actor a little bit, whether it's your confidence, whether it's you've learned from it. Like you said, you learned so many things. I gotta believe, especially you, and I'm saying this as a compliment, you seem to be really you have a thought process, and you really kind of think into not just, okay, here's my script, and like you observe the director, so you were playing that role. So I got to believe someone like you probably took every bit of knowledge that they could have gotten out of this role to carry forward to the next role. So not that I should really disagree with a guest, but I'll disagree with you. I got to believe this made you a better actor because of all the things that you took from it.
That was very astute. That was incredible. No, I'm glad you disagreed with me, because honestly, the reality is, and I tell people this all the time, I've already won with this film, regardless of how it does. All of the things that I learned off set, like with the people that I was around, relationships with Graham and Michelle, and like these really deep, heartfelt connections and conversations that I had, learning to be on set with Brandon, like all of these things, for me as a person, not just an actor, like as a person, really did give me that inner confidence and that feeling of belonging, because we all in some ways deal with imposter syndrome at some points in our lives. 100%. And you're very astute on that. Like it did change me. I think in some ways it ignited me, right? Because it definitely gave me the confidence, like you said, to because, and again, you need that in any facet of your life, right? You need
100%.
You need confidence from
absolutely,
right.
100%. Yeah.
So
and I imagine this is one of your first roles where you were the I don't want to say the feature, but one of the main features.
Yes, and there's a lot of pressure when you are carrying the main story of the film. And I think
you're that trailer. You're a significant piece of that trailer. So it's not like you're like in a little clip. You see it revolving around your character.
The main storyline is Graham and I, is John and I, and that is kind of the coming together of the two worlds. And John Shimke, the editor, gave me a really, really great compliment. Because we're golf buddies, and it was really sweet the way he said it. He said, you really had like the hardest role in that film, because you truly are the outsider. Michelle is she is so dynamic in this role, but she's trying to bring the two worlds together. I don't really understand the other world at first. I'm kind of more disengaging from it in a way to just get my work.
I was gonna say, you probably don't. Your character, when I say your character probably doesn't care about the other world, because you're not there to learn it. You're there to do a job.
Right.
Get the scene and get the hell out of there.
And I've compensated the other party to get the right to shoot a film there. But what Fabian is missing is that, sure, I'm shooting my film, which is my legacy, but I'm also capturing his ranch, which is his legacy. Yeah. And so within that becomes this dissonance. So when John gave me that compliment, it really made a lot, because I think there is like a real dynamic arc to my character, and what you're speaking to in terms of being a lead of a film is that you do feel the weight of that a lot more, because a lot of times in films you shoot these things like completely out of order. And for us, like, I was there the longest amount of time. Graham was a very consolidated schedule. He was there for 2 weeks. So we basically had to shoot my stuff that was kind of just me before and after Graham got there. Yeah. And when Graham was there, it was go time for him, right? So a lot of times you have to kind of remember where you are in that like emotional journe, because a lot of times you are shooting it out of order.
That's the one thing I've always found fascinating about movies is when you hear people talk about, I remember we shot this scene. It was, the last day we were there, and the entire cast is gone. We were the only 2 characters left, and we shot this. That was a middle scene. Or, if there's an intimate scene between 2 people, and like, we shot that the day we met. Yeah. So it's like we barely knew each other, and now we're doing this romantic scene. And I always found it fascinating, because you think that, you really think that the characters are evolving as the movie goes on, but that's just a sign of necessarily how good of actors they are. They're able to turn the emotion on, where they could be filling a happy scene, then a sad scene, and they're totally out of order, where you say, oh, I'm sad here because, my spouse got shot. But meanwhile, you haven't even filmed the scene yet where your spouse got shot. So you have to kind of, you can't even go back in your memory from, I remember in that scene how I felt. No, because that scene's being filmed next week.
Exactly. Everybody has a different process and how they do it. For me, it's a beautiful theme that's actually in somewhere in Montana, ironically, is I like think about it the night before, and I usually comb over a scene in detail one last time before what I call give it away, right? Because again, once you put it on film, on tape, that's it. That's what lives on. And there is a lot of pressure to that, but you have to put that out of your mind. You have to really kind of let your kind of best creative juices flow and just let yourself let go. But sometimes right before you're ready to give away your scene is when you go through it sometimes and you're like, I missed that, or maybe I could try that. Because the best thing about acting is, and it's called playing, right? Mm-hmm. Players, right? Is that a lot of times when you have multiple takes, which sometimes you don't have in indie films. So you have to, what I quote, a lot of people say, like, you give your first take and it's sort of like executing the plan. Like, Mike, you're my director, I'm your actor. What are we doing here? What's the blocking? I'm going to hit this, and then you want me to do that, and then camera over here, da-da-da-da-da-da, and then I'm going to walk off, and that's the cut. Okay, great. And then we do that take, and you say, Matt, that was great. We got it. Now, and that's usually when it's like, now, let's see if we can do something a little bit more spontaneous, or why don't you try to, hit that moment a little bit longer, then you're playing with it a little bit more. So I always try to give the director, especially in an indie film, where there are scenes in this movie where I got 2 takes, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe 3. So it was about execution sometimes, and it was about preparation. And I had a lot of time to prepare, and Brandon, and I did all these Zooms together, which was amazing. But the first time that you deliver a scene, that you give it away, I feel like should kind of be more your like execution, where you are just kind of sticking to the game plan, right? Like almost like a football team. Like this is our plan. We're going to execute it. But if you get a couple more takes, and sometimes you need them, believe me, there's one scene for me in this film that is it's a mental breakdown scene, right? That I have, and that's sometimes you need a little extra time for those. You know, sometimes you need to throw one away, right, before you can kind of get really into it. And those are the times where you just have a great cast and crew like we had, that knew that I was really trying to get there, and the energy, because they're still moving lights, they're still getting a shot together. I mean, they still got to do their job, right? But they gave me the space to just kind of be quieter, you know, and that really means a lot to the actors. And I can't really say enough about our crew. They really made the film come together. I always jokingly say, like, actors, like, are kind of the least important piece, like in a film production. You know, crews are what make films great. And you know, if you're a good actor, your preparation is done in pre-production. It's all the time I spent with Brandon. It's all the times I learned how to roll a coin on my finger, because that's my little nervous tick, as I learned how to roll a coin, right? It's all that work that you do in pre-production, and then you should be prepared enough as an actor to go in and do your job, right? Very Bill Belichickian, right? Like, do your job. But then if you, right. But if you, I'm a big football fan.
Well, like, I was gonna end with that. I'm gonna end with that right now, because, you know, like I said, I did my research this morning, and I'm guessing you're a Chiefs fan.
I'm a Chiefs and a Rams fan. It's very tricky for me, because and I know that's weird, but if you think about it this way, the NFC and the AFC used to be two different, you know, they used to be two different leagues, right? So I just love what the Chiefs do as a franchise. But now that I'm an LA guy, I love the fire that Sean McVay brings. I love that Stafford is still the most underrated pocket passer in the league. He can deliver any type of ball at any point. We just put up 44 against the Bills. This is the team that I knew that we were going to be all year. And it's like our kind of quote unquote, like, Super Bowl is now. Like, it's Super Bowl or bust with the Chiefs. But
I gotta tell you that I'm concerned. I got my fantasy playoffs next week, and I can't have Cooper Kupp putting up a 0 again like he did last week.
And listen, the problem, this is, I was in high stakes fantasy football last year, and here's what I'll say. It's the first year I haven't done fantasy leagues, and it's gold in the way that, like, your brain gets recircuited to not understand football anymore, because you're like, oh, Cooper Kupp had a terrible game. Well, Cooper Kupp, when he did that motion to the left and pulled the two linebackers to the other side, was why Colby Parkinson got that first down. And your brain goes to mush, because you're only like, well, he had such a crappy game. Well, he was getting double covered by the linebackers the whole game. So I'm so glad that only, like, for me, it's been sportsbook betting and prop betting. And I put a bet on the Rams, because if it's the Rams Chiefs, I'm going to the Super Bowl this year. Mark my words, Mike. And I put a bet on the Rams way, like, a couple months ago to win the NFC Championship game, which would buy me a Super Bowl ticket.
Listen, I could spend the next hour talking to you about prop bets, so we're not going to do that.
Well, listen, when you have a betting podcast, bring me back on for that, okay?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I try and find interesting guests, and I've actually reached out to some of these online people who, like, give these picks, just I want to talk to them about their model and how do they do all this, you know? So but it's great. I mean, so, you know, if I go on my TikTok feed now and I'm just playing around, it's like, even on my For You page, not even people I follow, because that's the algorithms are built on who you look at. If I go on right now, I'm going to have, like, the best props for the two games tonight. Then I'm going to have your top 3 college basketball bets. Oh my God. Yeah, it's crazy. But it's fun stuff. You know, what I like about it is, as long as you can control yourself, I can now watch any game and at least have interest where I normally would have no interest in watching that game. So
I think that's what, like, people like us, like, really understand, is it really does. It just, it gets you more involved in the viewing experience. And again, I listen, there is something about really focusing just on the game. Like I like sportsbook more than I like props, way more than I like fantasy leagues. Because again, I was in a fantasy hockey league last year, and you want to talk about fantasy football? Fantasy hockey is nuts. It's like you play each other, and it was a categories league. So I mean, you're talking like plus minus shots, blocks, hits. Like it was just like I had to have somebody like on my team at all times that like might drop the gloves and get into a fight, right? It was bonkers, right? And you play each other for a week. It's like when I like hung up the skates and hung up the cleats, so to speak, on fantasy leagues, I was like, fuck, I have so much time now. Why did I know who the tight end 3 was on the Bengals? Drew Sample, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, why do I know that? It's just like,
it's true though. My buddy texted me last week, said, why'd you pick up Homer for the Bears? I'm like, well, because Johnson has a concussion.
And Swift is right.
I'm thinking 3 weeks ahead in case these guys don't get better. I need them for the playoffs.
Mike, I'm telling you, you got to do a sports podcast. Have me back on, man. We'll have a completely different conversation.
You must hate the acting because you've totally lit up now. As soon as I'm talking about sports betting, you're like smiling. You're having a great time with me.
I love both. I think sports betting and sports is kind of like my.
That's your getaway.
It's not my job. Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing. Like there's part of it with acting that I love it so much. So it does center me. I'm more hyper focused on it. I look at it as a career path. And I always say this to like all the young actors out there, like really find out like what your why is and why you feel like you need to be an actor. Yeah. And then the plan B should always support the plan A. But I think when I talk about acting, I am more serious about it because it's my job. It's my career. Sportsbook betting is not my job. I am not getting on a football field and getting beat up.
Are you into college football as well?
Not into college. Always been into the pros. I know. And it's funny because Bad Beats is still one of my favorite. Like literally, like Monday night, man. Tonight, right? It's like I will watch I will watch SVP talk about sportsbook betting like till the end of time, like those two guys are so great. But like it's just the thing about college betting sometimes is like you're watching this game and you've got like 24 and a hook going into a game, and I'm like, why else would you be watching this game if you weren't betting on it?
Why do you think ESPN puts on MAC football on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night? I mean, is it for entertainment purposes? I mean, do I really care about Miami of Ohio against Akron?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I do. So I got 11 and a half on the under.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm watching that game, ignoring my family because I need to know, I need to know if they make this field goal. Yeah,
that was my favorite. Peyton Manning said once to Matthew Berry, it was like busting his chops. What did he say? It was like, yeah, they put a statue of you as the greatest like fantasy football guru out in the lobby. It's a guy on a toilet with his tablet and his phone, ignoring his family.
That's what it is, exactly. Yeah, I'll be up in a minute, honey. Yeah.
Right.
Or she'll say to me, how much time left in the game? I'm like, well, there's 2 minutes left. That's probably about 20.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, Matt, I could talk to you all day. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Same.
Tell people how they can follow you online.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very active on social media, but just on Instagram, honestly. So at Matt Drago, MattDrago, at Matt Drago. All of my links are there, actually. So it's the easiest way to find me. I've got my link tree there. You've got my website, my IMDb. So just click on the link tree there and it'll steer you to my production company, which also has a website, dragonhunterproductions.com, mattdrago.com. So yeah, just go to Instagram at Matt Drago and you'll find everything there.
All right. Well, listen, I really enjoyed talking to you. I am looking forward to, I will find this movie somewhere for sure. And I wish you nothing but continued success with the movie and everything else you do.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.